Welcome back to Newswire here on SportsGrid. Time to preview this week's slate in college football. Let's not make any promises about any results based on what we saw last week. Anything can happen, including a very big game tonight. I don't know that we thought this would be this at the beginning of the season, but here we are. Bill Bender is with us from Sporting News. And Bill, I mean, this is a game that Utah, to stay alive in the hunt, probably has to win. They're on the road at Arizona State. This is always a difficult place to play. And ASU sometimes, Bill, they're a strange team. Sometimes they show up and they look great. So other times they lay a complete egg. I don't know what to make of this game tonight, but I know Utah's defense is going to be tested.
It will. And Arizona State's one of the uniquely difficult places to play, regardless of how good the Sun Devils are. So you go to Tempe, and the proof in that is that Utah's 2-3 straight up there since joining the Pac-12. We have the Cam Rising factor. Is he going to play? It looks like he's finally going to be out there. Rising is one of 3 quarterbacks in the FBS with a QB rating over 200. The others are Jalen Milroe and Arch Manning. So, yes, he has a huge impact on the line if he plays. Utah's got to shut down Cam Scatterbo. Great running back, 5.6 yards per carry. I'm kind of like you. I've seen the line tick upward. I do think Utah is the better team and can win by a touchdown. But that is a tough environment, late-night game, going to be a lot of fun to watch. So I'll go Utah by a touchdown. But it's a tough one.
Yeah, no, this is, to me, a tough one to call, too, because, again, ASU is not one of those teams week to week that is super predictable. Their odds to make the college football playoff, by the way, are plus 310. And, by the way, this is your last shot to get this if they win tonight, because this is going to be one that would shoot them down to like 2-1 or plus 250, something like that. All right, now let's go out to the West Coast again for Saturday's game between Penn State at USC. Of course, the Nittany Lions are one of the best teams in the country this year. Maybe people are sleeping on them. I'm not sure that people don't realize how good they've been. They're 4.5-point favorites with a very interesting travel time for them. I know they had to go to a different airport. Saw that earlier in the week, Bill, to get out of Happy Valley and get to Harrisburg to get to USC. Trojans getting 4.5 points. I haven't been all that impressed with them this season. I think that's fair to say. 50.5 is the total here, so some points expected.
Yeah, and this is a back against the wall moment for USC. These heartbreaking losses at Michigan and Minnesota. We talked about that travel trend earlier in the week, but it bears repeating. Penn State hasn't played a regular season game on the West Coast since they played USC in 1990. 1990, 1991, they lost both games. USC's got to shut down the running game. They've given up over 5 yards per carry to Michigan and Minnesota. Penn State comes in there with Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. They would be content just to run the ball and maybe set up a few shots for Drew Aller. I don't love this line. The Nittany Lions are the better team. I understand that. I would lean towards the over, though, because I think USC is going to hang in this game, make a few plays. Maybe the travel spooks me more than the players, Craig, but it's just proven, with these trends within the Big Ten this year between the West Coast and the Midwest teams.
Yeah, no, it takes a while to get going. These first half unders also seem to be coming in as well. Very clearly USC in conference play has had its struggles. They've, had some good wins, and, certainly I think that they're up against it when they play in this game, certainly in the Big Ten. Penn State's defensive rankings also, James Franklin has done a really good job, 11 points per game, 232 total yards per game. And we know that their defense has been stout, but again, with a total of 50, you have to think USC is expected to score 2 touchdowns or more in this game. Meanwhile, is an upset on deck on Saturday night. This is one of those lines that has really shot down. In fact, I think I'm seeing some threes now on this game on FanDuel, if I'm not mistaken. Kansas State at Colorado. KSU is ranked 18th, and this line opened at 5. A lot of backing on the Buffs here, total of 56.5, and it is one of those classic potential upsets here with the ranked opponent visiting the unranked opponent. Colorado, Bill, it looked like they were headed to nowhere land, and then all of a sudden they put that thumping on UCF. They put themselves at least back in the positive picture.
And I think that's factored into this line here. When it was at 5, I'm taking Colorado. I'll take the points at home, knowing that they're 3-0 against the spread as a home underdog under Coach Prime. They've got the 2 best players in the Big 12, in Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter, who's on pace to play 1,800 snaps this season. I mean, just think about that, 1,800 snaps. It's unbelievable. But as it's gone down to 3, I think there's a little bit of value in Kansas State here. They had their road meltdown a couple weeks ago. They are the second best rushing team in the Big 10 or Big 12, 250 plus yards. Dylan Edwards, a Colorado transfer, DJ Giddens, Avery Johnson. I think the three of those guys get it going on the ground against Colorado. This could be the most entertaining game out of all these games we've talked about this week, which is so crazy to me. And if Colorado wins, they will become a very hot ticket to win the Big 12 because we will have seen them beat BYU and Kansas State, something I never thought I would say 2 months ago.
Yeah, no, I mean, that game against UCF really turned things around. And by the way, that game was not close either. So they're playing good football. But again, total 56.5. It tells you K-State's going to score some points on the ground in this one, too. They've been great this season. Are you surprised when we look at the Heisman Trophy that Milroe did not move higher up? Is that because of the second half, you think, against Georgia? I fully expected him to be less than 5-1 after beating Georgia. Now, I know that they lost to Vanderbilt, but still, I mean, was that necessarily his fault? I'm not sure. They scored a lot of points in that game, too. I don't know. Why am I staring at Milroe? Still think he's got a great shot to win the Heisman. I know Alabama. I mean, Alabama, Bill, can't they just lose one game and he could still win? I don't understand this.
Because you're smart. That's why there's value in the quarterbacks, Craig. I think Jalen Milroe could get back in the mix with all these big stage games he has on the SEC. I think Cam Ward might be a touch undervalued, given that they came back from 25 points. Travis Hunter's a hot name, and I understand why. And Ashton Genty's kind of the flavor of the week. But Ashton Genty faces an uphill battle. He has to rush for like 2,500 yards, and Boise State has to be in the playoff mix. That's just how we vote. So Milroe, still some really good value on that, and get on it now before it's too late.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, is it Milroe's fault they give up 40 points to the Commodores? I don't understand how that works, how that affects his Heisman odds. But went from much higher, of course, last week to this week. But I guess that's where we're at. All right, Bill, enjoy the weekend. We'll catch up again next week.